Ted had a bit of a good segue into the next topic, which is the Clean Power SF program. And we have Eric Brooks with us, who's been a grassroots environmental, consumer, and social justice organizer since 1985, when he began with public interest research groups in California and Oregon. And he's the sustainability chair of the San Francisco Green Party. And he currently coordinates the local grassroots organization, Our City, which has helped win a lot of progressive victories, including shutting down the last fossil fuel power plant in San Francisco. So they're really doing some pretty cool things. And Our City has also spearheaded the community-based effort to launch San Francisco's Clean Power SF program, and Eric's been helping coordinate that. The program has a strong foundation of locally installed renewables and efficiency, and it has the goal to power the city by at least 50% local clean energy sources by the end of the decade. So it's a pretty cool effort, and we'll hear more about it now from Eric. Maybe we can turn on the light because we don't have a presentation for this. Sure. We'll just have that lovely map to look at while we're
That's fine. Yeah, I'm a low-tech kind of guy, so I'm not going to have any slides. And I'll do what I've done throughout my job since I started with the PERGs in 1985, and that's just, knock on your door and talk to you. That's, I'm one of those people that comes to your door and tries to get your money to help save the planet, that kind of jazz. Or calls you on the phone. So I apologize, but we got to do it. So when I started as an organizer back in 1985, kind of my history of coming to this issue of clean energy started way back then, even though at that point I was working on mainly consumer issues, although I was an anti-nuke organizer. But back in I think it was 85 or 86, I read a book by Jeremy Rifkin, some of you might know who he is, about global warming. And so I started keying in on global warming right away when I first became an organizer. And so it's kind of been stewing for a long time. And as more and more was learned about global warming, I would nod my head and go, yeah, and we need to do something about it. And now we've got a situation where, as you know, the planet is in pretty big trouble if we don't act pretty quickly. Just to give you an idea of how much trouble, the International Energy Agency, which is by no means a radical organization, it was started by Henry Kissinger and others decades ago to scope out global energy issues, said last November that the human civilization has about 5 years to get its act together and seriously change its course on energy and transportation use to non-polluting sources and uses, or we're all in a lot of trouble and facing a very likely global collapse of our civilization. So that makes this a pretty serious issue. And the way I got tapped in for the last decade or so on clean energy is that I became the coordinator of this local grassroots group in San Francisco, Our City, which was if some of you remember, Matt Gonzalez ran for mayor of San Francisco way back in 2003. And all the activists that were kind of behind him some of them decided to create this organization so that we could take the momentum we had built up with that campaign and actually do something with it to get things passed in the local community. Consumer issues, social justice issues, and then the one that's been really consuming most of our energies and time, and that's community choice aggregation and Clean Power SF. So just to give you a basic idea of what that's about in San Francisco and just community choice itself. I've talked to a lot of people about community choice. You get a general sense that you know what it is, but I find that a lot of folks don't really have a basic picture of it that's as clear as they thought it was. And so basically what community choice means is that you don't take over the wires. You don't do public power. PG&E and others, investor-owned utilities, take care of that part of it. And what you do is you take all of your customers in a city or a county or in a group of cities and make them, the municipality or the group of cities or the county makes all those customers that are willing to stay in the program, the community choice program, sort of a big buyers and builders co-op for renewable energy. And even though community choice can be used for other things besides renewable energy, the creators of community choice meant it to really ramp up renewable energy quickly. And in San Francisco, it has been over a decade-long battle. It's been over an 8-year battle for me to get this going, simply because city agencies and county agencies are used to doing things the way they're used to doing them. And I'm sure a lot of you know that it takes some work to get bureaucracies to change their way of thinking. The idea behind community choice in San Francisco is to build out, in the first 3 years of the program, which we believe may get off the ground early next year, build out 360 megawatts of renewables and efficiency, some of which is solar. And then in the first 5 years of the program, get to that 50% or higher mark, so that we, by the end of this decade at least, will have half of our energy, electricity, coming from renewable sources. And then after that, just keep going, of course. We wouldn't want to stop. I think the thing that I want to impress on folks the most is that this is a way, and just to give you a sense of the amount, that 50%, and that 360 megawatts in the first 3 years, the peak load of San Francisco is around 900 to 1,000 megawatts. So that gives you a sense of the volume of this. This is kind of an umbrella for a community under which all these other programs that you learned about in this presentation can plug in. They can all get into it with their various models. And what you're doing is you're creating financing in 2 different ways. Well, actually 3. One is you're creating a customer revenue stream. You're bringing in all the customers that are willing to stick into this thing, so that they are going to be buying the electricity that you generate and that you purchase, to the extent you need to purchase some of it. And that gives you revenue that you can build things with. You're also going to build not just solar. Solar is only 31 megawatts of that first 360 in that first 3 years. But also over 100 megawatts of energy efficiency. We want to do a wind farm slightly outside of San Francisco, and a lot of things like cogeneration, which is where you take a gas boiler and use its waste heat to create electricity. And so all those things, especially the efficiency, things like efficiency and cogeneration, bring in very early revenues. And so what I want to give you a sense of is not just a solar garden, but a clean energy garden in an entire city or county or set of cities and counties. So that if you know anything about permaculture and how gardening and farming is done best, you know that to have a good farm or garden, you need to diversify. If you have all corn, you're going to get one type of pest that comes in and just wipes out your garden. Energy is the same way. You want to set it up so when the sun's not shining, you've got something happening like wind and cogeneration. Also set it up so that you are using that efficiency to lower your peak needs and to lower your overall need for electricity. And then you use things like storage, batteries, water pump storage, and also demand response, smart grids, so that you are getting people to use energy at different times and in different ways and with better appliances. And when you mix all those things together, that's when you've got a clean energy garden in which solar is one patch, like a patch of sunflowers. But they all work together. And when you do that, then there's always on electricity as if you had a fossil fuel power plant. And when you do that, the economics work a lot better because the efficiency and the wind that bring in revenues right away are helping you pay the higher upfront cost of putting a large amount of solar in. And then you spread the cost of the whole thing out over the course of 15, 20, years or more if necessary, like an energy mortgage for your entire community. And that allows you to roll this out at the same price as the existing fossil fuel energy utility. So that's the basic picture of community choice aggregation. And what we're facing now is that with community choice, as far as the challenges we're facing, whenever we have gone into communities, Local Clean Energy Alliance has been very instrumental in helping move the community choice model forward in communities in California. And whenever organizers have gone into communities to pitch them on community choice, what ends up happening with the decision makers and with the bureaucracy is that they will say, well, that's nice, let's just start with the customers and we'll build stuff later. And it's obvious why bureaucrats would do that, because it's easy. All you've got to do is hire a company to go out and buy energy for you and sell it. The problem with that is that any of you that know what renewable energy costs on the market knows that when you're going out and market purchasing and selling to your customers, that's the most expensive way to deliver renewable energy to your customers. And that's the other thing that, the other component that makes the build out so important, that makes building locally so crucial, is that gives you the ability to make up for that problem. And because that's going to be a lot of it's going to be municipally owned or customer owned. There's going to be a mix of that. And it's not really going to be for profit. So your renewable energy that you're going to get bringing in over the decades is going to be lower cost. And eventually, as you know, if the solar panels last long enough, you're getting free electricity and you can sell it to your customers. So that's the other point here, is that you need, and what I want to kind of wrap up on is that, and I'm not wrap up, is that you need to have the customer base and the building stuff happening at the same time. And then the thing that really wraps this up nicely, and what has recently, since 2008, it's been easier for us to push this at City Hall. And the reason it's been easier is because of the economic collapse. And every public official is talking about jobs. And so we are now able to go to City Hall, and this is the best way to sell local clean energy, and say to them, you need jobs, this is how you're going to get them. Build hundreds of megawatts of solar, renewables, and efficiency in your community, hire hundreds and thousands of people to do that, and be the first community that's an adopter of what Van Jones calls a Green New Deal for the whole country. So that's what it's about, and I'll be happy to hear your questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. And I think that point about creating the energy locally instead of just buying it on the market is an interesting one. I'm just learning about a lot of this, but I know that we've been hearing about possibilities for buying our energy in San Francisco from with a program that's getting it from the market, and I don't know where that's coming from. So that's something to think about as well. Is it being transported long distances over transmission lines from some other state, or are we creating it right here and creating local jobs and avoiding a lot of those transmission issues too? So just something to mention. But now we have a little time for questions, so if you have questions for any of these speakers, and I know they covered somewhat different subjects, but I think they're still all connected in interesting ways. So yes, we'll take one here.
All right, thank you. So this is for Eric. Can you explain how the CCA, Community Choice Authority, would capture the revenue from energy efficiency measures, which seem like they would stay with the building or the owner of whatever is carrying out the efficiency?
Yeah, well, the first thing is that it at least gives, even if you don't capture any revenue from energy efficiency, you're at least getting savings, and energy efficiency can help you deal with peak load and things like that. But there is a way to capture actual revenue from efficiency. And that especially will happen if you set up a power purchasing agreement with an installer company, or the city of San Francisco could be the owner and installer of efficiency measures, especially on big buildings, commercial buildings. And that is going to create a savings for the building owner, but the city has paid for it. So that what the city can do is give the owner of the building some of the savings, but can also take some of those savings and put them back into the community choice program. So that's a way that you can actually get a bit of revenue from efficiency and not just use it for savings.
Okay, and let me know also if you can't hear the questions. We can try to get a mic to pass around, but go ahead. In the middle there.
Yes. In 350.org that I'm associated with, and in the East Bay Bicycle Coalition, we've been grappling with the problem of outreach to poor and communities of color. What concrete examples have you had of successful outreach programs?
Well, I can only speak for my own program, so I can't really speak to. I'm also interested in, what does it feel like to buy into a solar garden if you're in, a community that Grid Alternatives serves. I mean, we have found that, the key to outreach is people you're outreaching to. So, at Grid Alternatives, we hire from within the communities we serve. Our outreach staff are all multilingual. Many of them started at Grid Alternatives by signing up their neighbors and their grandma down the street. Key community partners are also so very, very important, right? It's the church in the neighborhood, or the community organization, or the mosque down the street, or the synagogue, or, maybe the housing developer, in some cases the local government, that can be a key trusted partner. And so, partnership, right? Making sure that you say, okay, well, who's already here, who's already trusted, and how can they advocate for that first early adopter, and that early adopter advocate to their neighbors and their friends.
And one little follow-up. The organizations that want to promote solar and other earth-friendly initiatives tend to be, like this room, pretty Caucasian. Now, have you are there ways that you've overcome that particular barrier?
I guess as the non-Caucasian up here.
Yeah, good.
I would, and I can't speak to my own experience because the Clean Coalition is not so much a grassroots organization, but I've been really impressed by groups like APEN and Asian Pacific Environmental Network, Environmental Health Coalition, CEHA, California Environmental Justice Alliance. From a policy organizing point of view and outreach on policy, the group that came together that whole group came together on No on 23 a year and a half ago, and it was amazing. And they've also had that same group get their entire community engaged in AB 1990, which we were talking about, Solar for All, and that is targeted at those communities. And they were able to get 80 organizations to sign on to support that particular legislation. And among those 80 organizations, I think they're tremendously successful in essentially translating these policy initiatives into something that their community actually understands and wants to support.
Yeah.
So the map is still up, and basically, like Ted, you mentioned always, Germany is this kind of like rushing ahead, and well, I'm German, so I'm kind of proud always seeing this. However, I guess what you kind of maybe a little bit did not tell us, that of course the reason why they did that was that they have a feed-in tariff, basically we call it clean these days now, right? Which was basically incentivizing, I think, on the order of like 70 or something cents per kilowatt hour, where the actual price was only about 20, so almost like 3x what you could sell. So it was basically this: the country said, okay, let's dump millions or billions into incentivizing solar. So my question, maybe to the entire panel, would be: what ways do you see that maybe this really strong fit model or clean model could be kind of taken to the next level and to kind of get these really strong return on the investment? Is there any policy way we could go about to have that happen?
So one of the examples that's actually really useful in, well, two things. One, there's a lot of misinformation out there about how much the Germans are actually paying for their solar, and it did start, their feed-in tariff program did start relatively high, but they are actually paying less on a dollars per watt basis than we are right now. So for their solar right now, they're paying less to install solar in Germany at the 3 kilowatt rooftop level. And there's been several studies that have shown that the benefits they got from the feed-in tariff at that scale ended up saving their consumers money overall versus fossil fuel prices. The model in terms of bringing it to the U.S. and you cost effectively here, one of the really good models actually is Palo Alto, and the program that they launched last month called Palo Alto Clean was the basic design, and we helped them with this, was based on a German feed-in tariff model, but they priced it out in a way that would work just well enough to get incentivized installations, but at the same time was essentially rate neutral for their ratepayers. So they looked at how much this energy was actually valuable to them, how much it was worth. And I might have the slide there, but we can talk about that later. And they added up how much this energy was worth. And they said, okay, we're willing to pay that much for the solar. And it came out to a number that was actually just good enough for solar installers to put up their energy. So you can get to a model right now, because solar prices have come down so dramatically. You can get to a model right now where you're actually paying essentially equivalent to what you'd be paying, what that energy is worth in fossil fuel.
And I'll also chime in on that. Community choice actually does a lot to allow for feed-in tariffs, because and this is why he brought up both community choice and public power agencies. Currently, the state law is not, shall we say, streamlined for feed-in tariffs. The investor-owned utilities can really scale back on how much money you can get paid by going through them with feed-in tariffs. However, once you set up a public power district or a community choice set of communities doing this, like San Francisco and like Marin County, that barrier goes away, because a person with solar panels on their roof or a factory with solar panels on their rooftop can sell the electricity directly to the community choice aggregation setup for whatever price that we feel we can set on it and still have the whole thing economically work. So that's the great thing about community choice, is that it allows to go straight to full-on feed-in tariffs as aggressively as you can financially do it.
So speaking of finances, I was just wondering if any of you had thoughts about the recent decision about Chinese panels. Is that going to be an issue for the industry?
I wanted to chime in a little bit on the previous question first, and that is that with the feed-in tariff model, it would be very supportive of solar gardens if the virtual net metering is also available. Also, we want to make sure, again, that we have the low and middle income inclusion in this, and that there is a path to ownership, so that people aren't simply paying their utility bills now to another utility or to subscriber organization forever, and that everybody has a chance to actually own their own solar panels. I'd like everybody in the world that get a solar panel when they're born the same way they have a belly button, and be able to take it with them through life. Anybody want to comment on the tariff? I don't really have a comment on that.
I think, and I've been asked this question a bunch recently, I think there's actually a fair number of alternative suppliers that aren't necessarily, any of the named Chinese suppliers, that I think we won't see too drastic a rise in that. But it definitely changes some of the economics, for some people. But I think there's been enough of an oversupply in the market right now that it probably won't be a huge hit.
Right. Well, we're at a point where we only have an hour left, so I'm going to cut this off right now and just take a really quick, maybe 5-minute break if people can manage that, and then we'll come back and have almost an hour left.